Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Purpose Vision Future Show. I'm Amanda Hill, and I'm coming to you from Canberra, Australia. Now, I want to talk about something today, another tool which will help you in discovering your life's purpose, which we all have to deal with at one time or another, which is limiting beliefs. Now, before I do that, I want to talk to you about the different types or the different stages or types of our mind. We have our conscious mind, which is we're conscious of our thoughts, where it's, in the present, we're the here and now. I'm operating in my conscious mind at the moment because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say to you. And there is also the subconscious mind, and that is the part of your mind that you're not consciously aware of. So in your subconscious mind live your values, your beliefs, your instinct, all those memories of things that happened to you as a child, which you've forgotten, which is still kind of there, sitting there. They're all in your unconscious mind. And we talked a little bit about the unconscious mind in the episode when I was talking about values. Sorry, my mind just stopped there for a minute. My conscious mind stopped. We were talking about values, and we talked about the unconscious mind there, and that's where our values live. So you might want to go back and look at that. And yeah, so that's our subconscious versus conscious mind. An example of how our unconscious mind affects our emotions and beliefs. You all know the movie Jaws, that movie about the shark that used to go and bite people, and it had that do 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 music. Well, my conscious mind, it knows that it's just a movie. It's there's nothing to be afraid of. And whenever I hear that music, it's fine, I'm safe. But if I'm in a swimming pool and someone starts going do 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 do, I still go, oh. And it's my subconscious mind kicking in, linking that music with danger. And even though I know that I'm not in danger, for a second there, I'm afraid. And so our subconscious mind can affect our behavior, and our limiting beliefs live in our subconscious mind. Now, what are some examples of, before I go into that, mindset. Our Tony Robbins said the only meaning that things have in the world is the meaning that we give them. So, and this is the meaning we give things as part of our mindset. And our mindset is a framework of attitudes, expectations, and prejudices. And we live our lives through those things, and as we do with our values, as I said in the previous episode. And we also live our lives through our limiting beliefs. So what are examples of limiting beliefs? They can be things like, I'm too old, I'm too young, my family's always done it this way, so I have to as well. It has always been this way. This happened to me as a child, so it will continue to happen to me as an adult. And these are examples of limiting beliefs, which can really have a negative effect on our lives and stop us doing what we want to do. But the good news is we can actually change those beliefs by working on ourselves. We can actually change those beliefs. And so we can actually make changes to our subconscious mind, which will have positive effects on our conscious behavior and will allow us to actually do the things that we want to do. We will no longer be limited by our limiting beliefs. Excuse me. So I've come up with 4 steps, which I believe you can use to overcome your limiting beliefs. And don't worry, if you're not getting all this information down, don't worry about it, because it's all in this book. Seeing by vision, not by sight, how to discover your life's purpose and put it into action. And there's a whole chapter, which is chapter 9, on mastering your mindset. And part of that chapter includes overcoming limiting beliefs. So sorry about that bang. So if you want to get that book, just go to purposevisionfuture.com. That's purposevisionfuture.com, and you can buy the book there. So I've come up with 4 steps, which I believe if you take those steps, you can overcome your limiting beliefs. And I've certainly done that in my own life. So first, recognize the belief is a limiting belief. Step number 2, decide whether the belief is important enough to take the effort to overcome it, because it will be an effort. The third step is question the truth and reality of that belief, or truth, origin, and reality of that belief. And the fourth step is defeat it. That's what we like to do, is defeat it, don't we? So step number 1, which is recognize the belief as a limiting belief. And one way we can recognize it is one way we can recognize it is by seeing the consequences of that belief, and what that is actually causing us not to do. So when I was offered a job as a PR speaker for Guide Dogs New South Wales, ACT, you might remember this story. They told me at the interview that I would have to catch buses or public transport to as many of the engagements as I could. And I had caught buses in the past, I had formed the belief over a number of years, 20 years, that if I caught a bus, I would get lost and that would be a disaster. So the consequences of that belief were that I didn't catch public transport anywhere. And so that potentially stopped me from getting that job, which I really wanted. It stopped me from leaving the house unless I was being driven somewhere. It had some really serious consequences. So that belief was limiting my ability to get out and about unless someone took me. And, I was actually missing out on getting together with my friends. If someone couldn't give me a lift, I didn't see my friends. If someone couldn't give me a lift to church, I didn't go. And, so that was really limiting my life. But I let it do that because I believe there wasn't an alternative. And I'll get onto that. Please excuse my voice. And you may remember in the last episode, I interviewed an amazing woman called Nazreen. And now Nazreen is the CEO. If you haven't watched the episode, just to recap really quickly, Nazreen is the CEO of an amazing organisation called Project Starfish. And that organisation trains blind people to help them become more employable. And Nazreen had been doing that for a long time in various capacities. And she was offered the job of CEO of Project Starfish because the founder could no longer be CEO. He had to step away and do other things. And so for the organisation to continue, they needed Nazreen to step up and do the job. But she believed that an Asian woman who had only done factory work and a little bit of retail work couldn't be CEO of a company. And that just that brought her to a standstill. She just couldn't get her head around the fact that she was being invited to be CEO and that the founder had invited her because she had the skills necessary to do the job, which she did. She'd been doing the CEO's duties for months and months. But she just couldn't get her head around the fact that she could do it. So that belief limited her. She wouldn't take on the job. And it took a lot of talking and convincing and on my behalf, because I'm a very close friend, to get her to do that job. So recognize the belief is a limiting belief. That's the easiest, or recognize the consequences of that belief. That's one of the easiest ways to recognize it as a limiting belief. So, and a lot of us back up our limiting beliefs with excuses, don't we? Oh, well, mine was, I might get lost, or I don't know the bus timetables, or it's very easy for us to justify our beliefs with excuses, which are really doable. We can overcome them. I can look up the bus timetables online. If Nazarene didn't feel like she had the skills, which she did, she could learn them. And so that's another way we can recognize limiting beliefs, is that we start making excuses as to why we can't do things. And they're usually not very good reasons, even though we're very good at finding all sorts of reasons why we can't do things. So that's step number 1, recognizing the belief as a limiting belief. Step number 2 is decide whether it is important enough to overcome that belief, whether the things that the belief is stopping you from doing, whether it's important enough to want to do those things, because it's not necessarily going to be easy to overcome those beliefs. You're going to have to put in some effort. So are you prepared to put in that effort? So as I said before, not catching buses, it actually became really important to me. It was initially the job. I really wanted to do this PR job because it would give me a chance to practice my newly acquired speaking skills. And also Guide Dogs New South Wales ACT, who I would be working for, had given me 4 beautiful guide dogs at that stage. And I hadn't paid a cent for any of them, and no one pays a cent for guide dogs. They're guide dogs. And because most of that cost is still covered by public donations and bequests. And so we don't pay for our guide dogs, and it costs 50,000 Australian dollars to breed, raise and train a guide dog. So that's a lot of cost to be covered. And I'd had 4 of these guide dogs. And so I was so grateful to the organisation, and I really wanted to give back in some way. And yes, I was going to be paid a small amount to spec, which was, a bonus. I would happily do it for free, and had been doing so in an informal capacity for quite some time. So I felt really honoured to be offered a paid position. And so I really, really wanted it. So catching buses, that belief became important enough for me to put the effort in to overcome. And it was an effort. You may remember from previous episodes, I had to do 2 weeks of intensive training to learn how to overcome that fear and catch buses. So that belief was important enough. Nazarene got to realise that it was really important that she pick up the job of CEO, because if she didn't, the organisation potentially may not continue, or we might have to bring in someone who didn't have the grassroots understanding of Project Starfish and how it worked and such. So it was actually really important that she pick up that job. And so step 1 is recognise the belief. Step 2, decide whether it's important enough to put in the effort. And okay, so we're halfway through. And so I think it's about time now that we take a break. So stay right there, and I'll be back on the other side.
Mr. Happy Living here. I love good things made for good people. That's why I love Happy Living's online e-course. It's an 8-week-long deep dive into you and the inspired life you want to live. The life you were put here on this earth to live. The one that you and only you can live. 8 weeks of lectures and ideas and topics and supporting materials and powerful self-improvement tools. All designed for you. all designed to help you create the tools and the power and the confidence you need to discover your purpose and to discover the life you were meant to live, and to feel incredibly inspired and motivated to decide you will live your life to its fullest. It's all designed to help you create the unique and distinct philosophy of you and your inspired life. Go to happyliving.com, select our e-course, and save $100 with promo code WYTV7. And for every enrollment, I'll donate another $100 to WYTV7. For $300 and about 30 hours, I promise you'll never, ever be the same again.
Hello and welcome back to the Purpose Vision Future Show, where we are discussing limiting beliefs or overcoming limiting beliefs. And thank you to our lovely sponsors who make this broadcast and other broadcasts possible. And if you like what you're watching, please do donate to WYTV7. You can do so by going to WYTV7.org, and your donation makes this broadcast and other broadcasts possible. So thank you for that. Now, before the break, we covered the first 2 steps, or 4 steps of overcoming limiting beliefs. And they were to recognize the belief as a limiting belief, and then to decide whether it's important enough to make the effort to overcome that belief. So now we're going on to step 3, which is question the truth, reality, and origin of those beliefs. Because our beliefs come from all sorts of places, don't they? Like, some of our beliefs are just untrue. Like, if I was going to catch buses and I got lost, it wouldn't be a disaster. It wouldn't. Yes, it would be scary. Yes, I might get a little bit upset, but it wouldn't be a disaster. It wouldn't be like I don't know whether you're seeing on the news, but at the moment, but the flooding, the terrible weather that's going on here, it wouldn't, in Australia, it wouldn't be like the war in Ukraine. It wouldn't be a disaster. But sometimes it feels like a disaster, doesn't it, when we're afraid to do something? So that belief was just plain untrue. Sometimes our beliefs come from what we've done in the past. So, you know, I did that as a child, or it's always been this way, or we always do this for Christmas, and so we have to continue doing this for Christmas. Well, that's more of a tradition. But and going on to that, sometimes our beliefs come from our family traditions. We've always done it that way. Our family's done it that way since time immemorial. You know, it comes from our traditions. And so we can overcome those beliefs, like the untrue ones. We can overcome them by researching them or putting them to the test. What happens if I get lost? What could I do? I could ask people for directions. I could call someone and say, I'm lost, come and find me. In fact, that happened actually one day. I wasn't listening to the announcements because I was tired, because we have, excuse me, we have these wonderful recorded announcements, which says the next stop is Station Street, and, you know, or whatever the street is. And so I can listen to those announcements, and you sighted people can also see on the screen where the bus is going to stop next. And so I was really tired. I'd finished doing a presentation and I wasn't listening to the announcements, and so I missed my stop. And I'd been on the bus route all the way in both directions, and so I knew the stops that came up next. And I thought, I didn't panic. I thought, oh, that's okay. I can just get off at the stop near my mum's house, and then I can ring her and say, Mum, can you come and get me? Which is what I did. So you can research the beliefs. You can work out what will happen to sort of invalidate them. You can put them to the test. Okay, well, let's see what happens if I get lost. So yeah, there's different ways you can overcome those beliefs. And finally, you can defeat them. Once you've done all those things, you've recognized them, you've decided you're going to make the effort, you have invalidated all those reasons for why you have those beliefs, you can defeat them. One way you can defeat them is to find alternatives to them. So family traditions. My family's always done it this way. Well, you know, you don't have to be bound by your family traditions. You are your own person. You may still want to be bound by them, and that's okay, but you don't have to be. I'm too old or too young. Age is irrelevant. In fact, I don't know about in the US. I'm sure there are laws in the US which prohibit discrimination on the grounds of age. So age is irrelevant. You might be an older person looking for a particular job, but you might actually have all the experience necessary because of your age. You might be young, but you might be wise for your age. So age is really irrelevant. We've always done it this way. Well, maybe it's time for a change. Maybe you don't like the way you've been doing it. Maybe it's time for a change. And just because you've always done it this way, you don't have to keep doing it that way. This happened to me as a child, so it's going to continue happening to me as an adult. Well, children can be nasty beasts. They really can be very cruel. And, you know, a lot of that cruelty can come through ignorance. And adults are usually a lot more compassionate. In fact, I've got a lovely story about how that, in fact, I've got a few stories about how that belief has limited me. When I was a child, being totally blind, you know, quite often we'd have sport, and thank goodness teachers do different things. Teachers do things differently now. But when we used to do sport, the teacher would say, okay, everybody pick your teams. Okay, we've got two team captains, team 1, team 2. All right, you team 1 and team 2 captains, you pick your teams. And so they'd all go, I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you, I want you. And they pick all their teams. And they didn't really want me on their teams, neither of them, because I wasn't very good at sport. I couldn't run very fast. I couldn't jump very high. You know, my strengths lay in my brain. You know, I would rather do a maths test than do sport anytime. Still would rather do something mental rather than something physical, unless of course it's dancing or exercise. They're two things that I love doing, or lifting weights. I used to love doing that too. And so all the teams would be picked and I'd be standing there, and one of the team captains, who was one person short, would come up to the teacher and go, oh, miss, there's no one left. And the teacher would go, look, I'm sorry, you're just going to have Amanda on your team. And they'd go, oh. And so I'd be on their team. And of course, you know, it happens to you 1, 2, 3, 10 times over your life. And you start to believe no one wants me on their team. And I went to a conference a couple of years ago, Christian Women in Business. And you wouldn't think Christians would do that. But my mind still went when we had this games night. And I thought, oh no, games night. I hate games nights. That means we have to be on people's teams and no one wants me on their team. And it's just going to be really boring, and perhaps I should just stay in my room. But no, I thought, oh, well, I'll go. So I went to the games night. And I can't remember what the game was. Oh, I think it was where you had to pass. Oh, that's right. You had to hold a balloon between your knees and you had to pass it to the person next to you without touching it. And we had to pass the balloon along the line. And I thought, oh, look, I'll just sit this out. No one wants me on their team. And this lovely lady came up, and I've actually mentioned her in the acknowledgements to my book. She came up and she said, come on, you can be on my team. And I went, oh, no, look, you know, she said, no, come on. This is fun. You can do this. And I went, oh, okay then. So I was on her team. We had so much fun. Laughed ourselves silly, dropped the balloon. You know, it wasn't just me who dropped the balloon. She dropped it too. And it was great fun. And every game that came up, the only game I sat out was musical chairs, and we all agreed that, you know, that might be dangerous if I'd try and sit where there isn't a chair. So that was fine. But all the other games, all the women insisted that I was on their team. Not only did they insist that I was on my team, they helped me. And some of the games we even won. And so that really helped me overcome that limiting belief that no one wants me on their team, because they do. And, you know, I had such a good time. And I remember at the end, I hugged her and I cried, and it's bringing tears to my eyes as I think about it. I hugged her and I cried and I said, thank you so much for helping me overcome a belief which has kept me stuck all my life, all my 52 years. Or I was 50 back then, all my 50 years. And, you know, now I can enjoy games nights. So that's the way you can overcome limiting beliefs, and you can do those things that perhaps your limiting beliefs have stopped you from doing. And before I go, I would just like to leave you with my customary piece of encouragement. If you're facing a challenge or a limiting belief that seems a bit too big, seems a bit overwhelming, just reach inside, grab hold of that courage, which I know you have, pull it out, and I promise you, you will be just fine. Thank you.